Congressman, what do you expect to see coming out of the nuclear talks in Vienna?
Well, we don't know yet what to expect. We're hopeful that the next 6 months to a year can produce an agreement that would result in a clear indication and verifiable proposal that Iran will not develop a nuclear weapons capability. The Supreme Leader has said that he doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapons capability, but we need to have an agreement that makes that statement real. So that's our goal. Obviously, the goal on the Iranian side is to provide some relief to the sanctions that have been imposed to improve the Iranian economy. So there are mutual interests here that could result in an agreement. But as to whether or not we'll get there, it depends on the negotiations. And from our perspective, depends on whether or not Iran is really willing to make its statements real through this agreement.
Do you accept a final nuclear deal that allows Iran to have limited scale enrichment capabilities with a heavy water reactor? Is this something acceptable to you?
Well, there are a couple things packed into there. First, the United States does not recognize that Iran, or in fact any country, has a right to a nuclear enrichment capability. We don't believe that the Non-Proliferation Treaty gives people a right. However, we've clearly signaled that the United States would be prepared to allow some level of enrichment so long as it was very clear and verifiable that enrichment capability could not be a pathway to developing nuclear weapon and nuclear weapons capability. We believe that the heavy water reactor at Iraq has no really good purpose other than to develop plutonium and nuclear weapons capability, which is why we've said that we're very troubled by that, and we would want that converted to a light water reactor or some other form.
So you're open with the enrichment, but no to heavy water reactor?
I should be clear that the United States negotiators are obviously going to be putting the American position forward, but I think they've made it clear as part of the interim agreement that they are open to some very low level of enrichment, a level of enrichment that would be consistent with any kind of scientific research or developing an indigenous nuclear power capability. But every expert that I know has indicated that Iran's current nuclear enrichment plan creates the potential for a lot more nuclear material than is necessary to support either of those two more limited objectives, which is why there's great concern. People look at the Iranian nuclear program and say, what could Iran possibly want with this huge enrichment infrastructure? And so any agreement would have to dramatically limit that enrichment infrastructure.
Why did you sign in to this letter to President Obama regarding diplomacy with Iran?
Well, we wanted to make it clear that there were members of Congress who support the idea of a negotiated effort, that we support the idea of giving diplomacy a chance to resolve this issue. We also made it clear in that letter that if diplomacy fails, the Congress would be prepared to move forward, as it has in the past, with increased economic sanctions. And I think people need to understand very clearly that that will be the result of a failed negotiation, that there will be a tightening of sanctions. And beyond that, as the President has indicated, all other options also remain on the table. So it is important, I think, to both sides to try to resolve this issue at the negotiating table.
Can we assume that there will not be a vote on new Iran sanctions legislation or even any non-binding resolution on Iran anytime soon?
Well, you never know in the United States Congress. As you know, in the United States Senate, a piece of legislation has been introduced that would apply additional sanctions. The President has been clear that he opposes that legislation. In fact, he's indicated he would veto that legislation. In the House, there's been some talk of resolutions short of sanctions, not including sanctions. But one of the purposes of the letter was to send a signal to our colleagues here in Congress, as well as a message to the White House, that there are many of us who believe that we should give diplomacy a chance, give these negotiations a chance, because obviously to the extent that we can resolve these matters at the negotiating table in a way that's satisfactory, then that averts the possibility of other kinds of actions.
Was there any lobbying to sign this letter?
Not to my knowledge. This was actually an effort developed here in the Congress by members of Congress who believe that we should give the negotiations a chance. I should emphasize again, though, the House has already passed another round of economic sanctions legislation. We did that before the election of President Rouhani. We did that before these negotiations got underway. That legislation is sitting there in the United States Senate. And if these negotiations were to fail, the Senate could immediately take it up and pass it, that and additional sanctions. So the purpose of the letter was simply to indicate that many of us in Congress want to give this process a chance. But we also indicated that if it fails, that the Congress will move forward again with even tougher economic sanctions.
So no pressure from the White House or any outside group like NIAC, anything to get this letter signed?
Not to my knowledge. Now, there may have been groups that once they learned about the letter, they supported the letter. But in terms of the origin of the letter, where it was initiated as an effort here in Congress by members of Congress who support the idea of giving these talks a chance. It was in part a reaction to other efforts in Congress to impose additional sanctions now. And our concern was that if the Congress were to pass legislation to impose additional sanctions, it would do two things. One, it would strengthen the hand of those in Iran who don't want an agreement. In other words, it would strengthen the hand of the hardliners in Iran who would say, look at what the United States Congress did. They're not serious in the United States about a negotiated solution. And it would harm and undermine and weaken the international coalition that currently exists to impose economic sanctions on Iran. If some of our close partners were to conclude that the United States wanted to short-circuit the process, did not want to engage in serious negotiations, we believe that would harm our ability to maintain the sanctions and to reach a negotiated settlement.
Is Congress for the first time divided on Iran?
I don't think we're divided. I think it's a question of what is the best strategy and best tactics going forward. I think there's an overwhelming majority in the United States Congress, probably unanimous, that is in support of making sure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapons capability. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that everything the Supreme Leader has said, including the fatwa he issued, says that that is the Iranian position. And so if that's the Iranian position, then why not have an agreement that dramatically reduces the ability to enrich nuclear material so that it can be clear and verifiable that the only purpose of this is either limited scientific research or a limited nuclear power capability. But again, right now, if you look at the Iranian nuclear program, it is much broader and more expansive than that.
So just to kind of clarify this, you have supported sanctions on Iran before.
Yes.
Your position fundamentally changed toward Iran.
Well, my position has been that we should give the negotiations a chance. But I continue to believe that sanctions are a big part of what brought Iran to the negotiating table. And now the question is whether Iran is genuinely interested in an agreement that will result in essentially a program, a plan that will ensure that they do not develop a nuclear weapons capability. And so, my hope would be that we could reach this agreement. This would be obviously a significant change in the Iranian-United States relationship if we were able to reach a negotiated settlement. Does that mean that all of a sudden we'll have resolved all the other issues and disputes between the United States and Iran? No, but it would be a significant change if we're able to reach this. As the President indicated, he thinks it's maybe a 50-50 chance. From the U.S. perspective, it depends on whether the Iranian government is truly willing to sign an agreement that reflects what it says its position is.
Do you think would more sanctions bring about more concessions from Iran?
Well, at this point in time, I don't think additional sanctions would be productive right now because both sides are engaged in this negotiation. And my concern would be that additional sanctions right now would simply strengthen the hand of the hardliners in Iran who do not want an agreement. In fact, in my view, that plays into the hands of people who do not want.
Is it because of the sanctions they're on the negotiating table?
Yes.
And we want to get as much as concessions from Iranian as possible. So would more sanctions bring about more concessions from Iran?
Well, the sanctions are, for the most part, still in place. I mean, there are already very tight sanctions in place on Iran. And this interim agreement only loosens a teeny little piece of those sanctions. I mean, all the oil sanctions, all the banking sanctions, all of those remain in place, and they will snap right, they will continue in place unless there's an agreement. And the very limited sanctions relief that exists will immediately disappear if this negotiation does not bear fruit, if it's not successful. And on top of that, there will be additional sanctions if these negotiations are not successful. The purpose of the letter was to signal that there are many of us who believe in this, that this process should be given a chance.
Can this letter be interpreted as a blow to AIPAC and the policy they're advocating with respect to Iran?
No, I don't think so, because I think the major difference here has been one of tactics, not overall goals. And AIPAC itself indicated that they're no longer pursuing the sanctions legislation because I think they recognize that at this point in time that is not the best path forward. So the goals of members of Congress are the same with respect to Iran and its nuclear program. And so this letter is part of an effort to make sure that we give that process an opportunity to work.
Is your timeline the same as the administration's timeline?
Yes. Yes, I think that the administration's made clear that we want to try and reach a comprehensive agreement within a 6-month period. As you know, there is a 6-month extension provision in the interim agreement itself. But I would hope that both parties would want to try and resolve these issues as quickly as possible. Again, the test from the perspective of the United States will be whether or not Iran is truly prepared to enter into an agreement that ensures the United States and the international community and others around the world that they cannot quickly achieve a nuclear weapons capability. I think the interim agreement was an important first step, but obviously only time will tell as to whether or not we can get a comprehensive agreement. But the question that many of us pose to the Iranian government is, if it is true that you do not want to develop a nuclear weapons capability, why would you not agree? Why would you not agree to limits and a verification system that ensure that that doesn't happen?
Iranian leaders say that the statement that all options are on the table is counterproductive. Why use officials repeat this notion so often, especially now?
Because the position of the United States government, the position of President Obama has been that it is unacceptable to the United States, to our allies, and to the international community for Iran to develop a nuclear weapons capability. And if that is your position, then you're willing to use all means to accomplish that. The President's also clearly signaled that he'd prefer to deal with this through diplomatic means. That's why the President is at the negotiating table, despite the fact that there are many voices in the United States that do not want to have any conversations with the Iranian government. They don't even want to give this a chance because they do not believe the Iranian government is serious at the end of the day about what the Supreme Leader says, which is that Iran do not want to have a nuclear weapons capability. A lot of people just don't believe that. The President wants to test that proposition. He wants to see if through a negotiated process we can make that statement verifiable and real. But if that's not successful, it is the United States policy that Iran should not and will not and must not obtain a nuclear weapons capability. And again, I go back to the fact that that is the stated position of the Iranian government. So let's see if we can't reach an agreement that provides assurances that that will not happen.
Supreme Leader Khamenei also, he said that the nuclear issue is an excuse for overthrowing the Iranian government, for regime change ultimately. Is he right?
No, in fact, the President has stated on numerous occasions that our goal is to make sure Iran does not develop a nuclear weapons capability, that they don't develop a nuclear weapon. It is not about regime change. Just as in the case of Syria, when the President said that he was prepared to use force, it was designed to make sure that the Assad regime did not use chemical weapons again. It was designed specifically to get rid of the weapons of mass destruction. And once Assad, with pressure from the Russians, agreed that he would get rid of his chemical weapons stockpile, the President said that we no longer needed to use force because we had accomplished the objective. The objective the President laid out for the use of force in Syria was to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction, their chemical weapons stockpile. The same is true with respect to the goal of the negotiations in Iran, which is to make sure that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapons capability, which again I want to emphasize is what the Supreme Leader Khamenei has indicated himself is the Iranian position. So we want to make sure that that statement genuinely reflects the policy of Iran.
So if you make a deal on nuclear issue, you wouldn't go after the violation of human rights in Iran, or after ballistic missiles program, any other issues?
Well, it is true that the United States will continue to have differences with Iran on different parts of Iranian policy. So, for example, you mentioned human rights or the position that Iran has taken in Syria. Those will remain differences between the United States and Iran. But there's a significant difference between having a disagreement over those kind of issues and the goal of regime change. You know, our view is that the people of Iran should be given a much greater voice in their future. You know, we don't think that elections that by design exclude certain people are truly reflective of the will of the people. In the United States, if there was some supreme leader who got to say, you don't get to run for office, you can't run for Congress, we would not consider that a democratic process. We recognize that there are, political dynamics within Iran, but we do not think the political system allows the people of Iran to have a full voice. But the President has also made clear that the objective of our policy, of our sanctions policy, is focused on Iran's nuclear weapons program. The focus of the sanctions policy is not regime change.
The Supreme Leader just said that some members of Congress receive money from Israel to present their views in U.S. What's your reaction?
Well, our campaign finance system does not allow anybody to receive contributions from any foreign governments or foreign nationals, whether they be from Israel, France, Germany, the UK, Canada, Iran, or anywhere else. So it would be a violation of our campaign finance laws for any foreign national, non-U.S. Resident to be contributing to anybody's political campaign.
But you know, his point is that the U.S. Congress is very much pro-Israel, and that makes it hard to strike any deal with between Iran and the U.S.
Well, the U.S. Congress, including myself, strongly supports our relationship with Israel and is strongly committed to ensuring the security of Israel. After all, Israel has many enemies in the surrounding area, and it is absolutely United States policy to make sure that we help Israel with its defense and that we ensure the security of the state of Israel. I would hope that that would not be an impediment to a negotiation with Iran. Secretary of State Kerry is at the same time pursuing actively negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians to try to resolve that important issue. But make no mistake, I mean, the United States will continue to be committed to the security of Israel. And if that's an issue with Iran, then they should say so. I mean, there have been some statements coming out of the new president that seem to at least be very different than we heard from President Ahmadinejad. And we hope that that's a sign of things to come.